Why do you think you are looking at the biggest problems that we are facing to do with technology? So I think it comes from your background of doing physics and engineering and economics, which is a really interesting mix. But why have you been involved in and why do you strive towards solving those biggest problems with technology?
Besides the fact that these are just the most fun problems to be working on, I genuinely think a lot of it, I think it sounds naive and simple, but I genuinely think that a lot of it just has to do with the fact that there's this curiosity and this itch and almost a challenge to myself to solve something like that. It feels, can I take some of the cutting edge R&D that exists right now and package it up in a way that solves an absolutely massive problem? I think there's some point along the curve at which in a couple years the tech will be good enough to
Right.
solve this at scale, right? It will be robust enough, reliable enough. And I think there's a real talent to spotting that at just the right stage. You don't want to be too late because other people will have done it. You don't want to be too early because then you'll be stuck in R&D for too long. I think another part of it is that I feel a sense of responsibility to do things that impact billions. And I honestly don't really know where that comes from, but it feels there's not too many other people that are in a position to be able to do that. And so it
Mm.
kind of feels to me like I need to step onto the stage and take that on and sell other people on the dream and raise money and hire people and convince customers to follow me on this journey. And then I think the last piece of it, I think, is that it feels like just the highest personal growth vector. And I don't want to be in a race with other competitors that are really close. There's this Peter Thiel philosophy of competition is for losers.
Mm.
And it feels like if you're in a race just to create a slightly better ad than your competitor, or they just launched the feature, let's copy it so we get feature parity. If you're one app in a sea of other social apps or fairly basic things that other people can copy, I just don't think I'd learn very much and add that much value. Other people can build it, then it's not that interesting to me anymore.
That's very interesting. Before we move on to Portfolio Pilot, what was the exit like for selling Iris Automation?
So we ran it for about 6.5 years. And as you can imagine, I built a lot of the original computer vision algorithms and code, and then we hired smarter people than myself. And 2 years in, these computer vision deep learning experts sat me aside and said, okay, Alex, you're doing more harm than good at this point. Stop coding, just sell and hire and partnerships and venture capital and do the CEO thing. We got regulatory approvals eventually. We actually bought our own airplane. We did tens of thousands of like basically mid-air collisions, these near mid-air collisions to show that our system could actually dodge out of the way of a real airplane in the sky. And then regulatory approvals, commercial sales. We partnered with Fortune 500 companies, got regulatory approvals with the FAA and Transport Canada and other civil aviation authorities around the world. Lots of big distribution partnerships. And then 2021 markets went crazy, and a big partner of ours, backed by a private equity firm, did a leverage buyout, gave us an offer. And one of these big board votes decided to take it and sell the company. And we basically had this regulated monopoly at that point. And the two companies together basically owned this space, this critical part of the stack. And I mean, it's fascinating. I learned a tremendous amount by it. A lot of big decisions of like, hey, finally, we have all these regulatory approvals. The tech works. We're seeing real scale on commercial traction. should we just keep going and
That's what I was
become the
going to
next
ask you. I was going
Boeing
to
or
ask you,
Honeywell?
were you in that sort of, I can commit to this for potentially another 10 years to grow it, or is now the right time to exit?
Absolutely. Huge conversations. It took a long time to get to this resolution. I think it also just been my entire world.
Yeah.
Basically, from 16, when I was thinking about space and aviation and flying and astronaut and NASA and drone package delivery startup and Iris Automation. And in the middle there, I also worked on a massive code base for basically building FAA arrival and departure procedures and 3D modeling and a computer vision project at Airbus Space and Defense in Germany for experiments for the International Space Station with this very expensive computer vision system. And this world was basically all I knew. And I felt like we were working on the most important problem in the most important industry, and we had a lead. And so it was difficult to part with that. But we decided to sell. And I think as soon as we decided to sell, there was some switch in my mind, and I started thinking about other things in life. And I think in the following 4 to 8 weeks, I put together a list of 50 different company ideas that were not in the aerospace or autonomous vehicles, robotics world at all. And I think immediately my mind opened to the idea that most people actually don't think about drones or commercial drones at all. I mean, I was on the road probably 2 weeks of every 4 weeks at conferences and robotics deals and meeting with people. You're so involved in this world 24/7. And we bought a house and we had kids. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old now, two boys. And my wife runs this biopharma company. They've basically built a digital twin of the human body for drug development. And so I worked with them as a technical advisor for a little bit, helping to uplevel some of their AI systems and think about testing and evaluation at scale. That was absolutely fascinating. This whole world that was so close that I never really dove into. And then we started talking to financial advisors, not because I wanted to build an AI financial advisor, just because when you have a little bit of money for the first time, you want to bring in experts, right?
Yeah.
It became very clear very quickly that these financial advisors weren't the experts that they portrayed themselves to be. They were mostly just salespeople charging 1%, 1.5% to manage your money and put it into the same fund as the other couple hundred
Yeah.
clients they're managing. And maybe an annual meeting to check in, maybe an email once in a while. And it felt to me like fundamentally there's something wrong here. I truly just did not understand how this $240 billion industry still existed. Felt so little value being added for the amount of value being extracted. Very quickly, it felt to me like, okay, there's this just absolutely unnecessary middleman layer here, and started looking at alternatives. And robo advisors, I think, promised to change that, but they didn't really make a dent. I mean, there's $1 billion industries there, right? And just these Gen 1 robo advisors like
Yeah.
Betterment and Wealthfront and Vanguard and Fidelity have robo advisors. But it felt like lowest common denominator advice. It also wasn't very personalized. There's something easy to use about these platforms and to onboard to, but I don't think anyone really thinks that they've won and destroyed the human financial advisor industry. And then there's 1,001 trading tools and investing tools and signal generators and backtesting strategies and Wall Street bets and Motley Fool and
Yeah.
CNBC and Bloomberg and news. And I also didn't want to just become a portfolio manager and actively manage finances. It seemed to me like the actual solution that should exist, and I was surprised that didn't exist, was let me take my real estate, my house, my crypto portfolio, my 401k, my 529, my wife's 401k, our Roth IRA, our cash accounts, emergency accounts, maybe stock options, my wife's startup equity, like a bunch of these different accounts, put them all together in one place, get some sort of unbiased analysis about like how efficient is that? Is it really properly diversified? Because most people talk about diversification as like a mix between stocks and bonds, but truly diversified, let me run a few simulations across historical crashes. What does that look like going forward over the next couple of years? Am I actually on track for retirement? Am I taking the right level of risk? Can I do something about tax optimization? But there's, if you really dig into it and sit down with an actual expert, it feels inevitable that they will be able to find optimization opportunities for you. And
Right.
so I think over the last couple of years, what's become clear is that as society, we're not quite ready for AI to manage our money for us. But the idea that you could use AI to find these optimization opportunities for you and give very personalized, specific advice, I think already tens of millions of Americans are open to that idea.
Yeah.
And that's
What's one of the
basically what we built.
what's one of the biggest misconceptions of AI in the finance industry?
I think it's a good question. I think even just the way we portray Portfolio Pilot as your AI financial advisor feels a little bit misleading because we are not managing people's money. And so this is mostly a tool for self directed investors. And so I think for self directed investors, I think the most common way they might think about AI is thinking about reading earnings reports and balance sheets or scanning thousands of different companies and computing things at scale or using it as a chat GPT to answer questions and get an expert in the room so you can ask it any questions. And I think that fundamentally misses the core value that AI can bring for most people,
Which is what?
which is personalization and proactive advice. And so I don't think you need Portfolio Pilot to research tax optimization strategies or figure out what the latest Tesla stock price is or explain to you what inflation is like you were a 5 year old. Use ChatGPT, use Anthropic, use Google. If you know the right question to ask, then there's many tools out there to help you answer that. I think the main problem is that most people don't know what the right question to ask is. And I think most people are disinterested in this part of their life. I think it's very important to them. They know it's very important, but the idea of doing research or feels
Mhm.
almost like pulling teeth or doing my taxes.